Good evening, everyone, and welcome back to Answers on Eschatology. My name is Dan Derry, and I am the president of the Institute of Fulfilled Eschatology. Well, we are back in Matthew chapter 24, and we took a little bit of a hiatus. We did a 7-part study on the second coming of Christ out of Acts 1, 9 to 11. If you haven't seen it, I encourage you to check it out. You can find it on my YouTube channel, as well as my website, www.reformedeschatology.com, and I promise you, you will be blessed by that series. So, back into Matthew 24, we're going to share some thoughts with you from verses 23 to 25 and simply demonstrate that these verses find fulfillment in history in the first century generation. Let's read verses 23 to 25 and we'll jump in. Then if anyone says to you, behold, here is the Christ, or there he is, do not believe him. For false Christs and false prophets will arise and will show great signs and wonders, so as to mislead, if possible, even the elect. Behold, I have told you in advance. Now, these words of Jesus were spoken, in the context of the coming of the abomination of desolation, Matthew 24:15, the Great Tribulation, Matthew 24:21, and at that time, when the disciples saw the abomination of desolation, when the Great Tribulation would begin to take place, then these false Christs and false prophets would arise in order to deceive or mislead, if possible, even the very elect. Now, what I want to begin to do is I'm going to quote from a quotation from Josephus, page 453 out of his book, The War of the Jews. And I want to simply show you what Josephus records regarding these false Christs and false prophets during the Jewish War, approximately 66 to 67 AD, this took place. Watch this. Josephus says, a false prophet was the occasion of these people's destruction, who had made a public proclamation in the city that very day, that God commanded them to get upon the temple, and that there they should receive miraculous signs of their deliverance. Now, there was then a great number of false prophets suborned by the tyrants to impose upon the people, who denounced this to them, that they should wait for deliverance from God. Now, this was actually probably later than 66, 67. This is probably 70 AD, just before the destruction of the city. But nonetheless, Josephus tells us, and this is important, he tells us that these false prophets, these false witnesses were suborned by the tyrants in Jerusalem. Now listen, these tyrants he refers to were the Jewish Zealots. They ruled Jerusalem at that time. They had taken control of the city and of the temple, and they were against the commoners fleeing from the city, fleeing from Jerusalem. Why? They were in war with Rome. They needed all the manpower they could get, and they didn't want these people who saw the writing on the wall. They knew they were doomed. They didn't want them going and joining the Romans. Number one, they would probably be killed, but number two, they might fight against them. These people were massively oppressed by these zealots for 3 years, and they wanted to leave. However, what the zealots did in order to retain these people, they put these words of false prophecy in the mouth of these false prophets, and these false prophets deceived Israel into thinking that Messiah was going to come and deliver them, that he was going to miraculously defeat the Romans and redeem Israel in a physical, national manner of deliverance. But watch this. Here's something from Josephus that we can glean that helps us understand the context of these false Christs and false prophets in Matthew 24. Listen, these false Christs and false prophets, they were prophesying, they were leading Israel astray concerning something specific. This isn't like what we would call a false prophet today, or a false Christ today. That can be so generic as to this false teaching or that false teaching, or he spoke a word and it didn't come true, he's a false prophet. Well, that doesn't mean anything, really. These false prophets And these false Christs of Matthew 24, they arose for a specific purpose in deceiving even the elect if possible concerning the destruction of Jerusalem, the deliverance of Israel, and the coming of the Lord to, number one, judge Jerusalem and bring about the kingdom of Messiah. This is the context of Matthew 24. When shall these things take place? The destruction of Jerusalem, the disciples asked Jesus, what shall be the sign of your coming and the end of the age? This is what the Jews rejected. The majority of them, of course, the remnant were being saved, but the majority rejected that Israel and Jerusalem would be destroyed, that the temple would be destroyed. They rejected that their kingdom was going to come through their judgment. They believed that the nations had to be judged and Israel, right, be delivered from this judgment, from this Roman war. That's the deception. And many were led astray. Many in Israel were led astray. Listen, this is so important. These false Christs and false prophets, they denied that Jesus had come as Christ. We're going to get that in the next video. What I want to do what I'm doing in this video simply is showing you false Christs and false prophets from within Jerusalem, from within the Jews. In another video, we're going to look at these false Christs and false prophets from outside of Jewry, and these other false Christs and false prophets came out of the body of Christ. They were members in the church at one time, and they also, it's these ones specifically who were attempting to lead the elect astray, okay? These ones who Josephus talks about were just simply deceiving the Jews, all right? These weren't saved Christians in the city at that time. They weren't saved Jews either at that time, Jewish Christians. But here's the point. Matthew 24 and the arising of false Christs and false prophets to deceive the elect if it were possible, and to deceive Israel in the context of the Great Tribulation, okay, is a deception based upon the end of the age and the destruction of Jerusalem. They were telling Israel, God's not going to destroy this city. Messiah is going to come and deliver us. This age, this is not ending. Let's go to the temple. Let's go here. Let's go there. This Messiah is going to deliver us. See, they rejected the gospel of the kingdom. And that gospel, that good news of the coming kingdom was the old covenant kingdom was about to be removed. It had to be removed in order for Israel to be redeemed. The wicked majority had to be destroyed. Justice had to be served. Christ had to be vindicated. His saints and the martyrs, the Old Testament prophets, had to be vindicated at the judgment of that old covenant world in AD 70 in order for Messiah to fully establish his kingdom and for Israel to be redeemed. They didn't understand this, and these false prophets and false Christs rejected it, and they were leading Israel astray concerning the gospel of the kingdom. That's what the context is of these false Christs and false prophets. It was a first century fulfillment concerning a first century message and a first century deception around that message, which is the gospel of the kingdom. That's it for this time. Next time, we're going to do another video on these verses. I'm going to show you that not only in Jerusalem were these false Christs and false prophets rising, but outside of Jewry, in the body of Christ, this same problem arose in order to deceive even the elect, if it were possible. Thanks, guys. We'll pick it up next time on Answers on Eschatology. Bye for now.